This week, a federal judge in Seattle temporarily blocked plans for release of blueprints online for 3D-printed guns. Lawmakers worried that publishing these designs would lead to a wave of easily produced, untraceable firearms. It was the latest development of a battle that began in 2012 with a man named Cody Wilson and a nonprofit called Defense Distributed. But in some ways, it doesn't really matter what the government says. The technology is here. 3D printed guns are coming. And they're going to change the gun control debate forever. First, let's talk about how this works.
The real reason that 3D printing for guns have existed for at least the last 5 years, maybe more, but we don't see very many people walking around with 3D printed guns, is the quality is still fairly low compared to the quality of guns using metal.
That's David Koppel. He teaches law at Denver University, and he's a policy analyst for the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank based in DC. And he's right. This is a video of the Liberator. It's the handgun that Cody Wilson designed in 2013. The first 3D printable firearm whose blueprints were made available online. This video from the ATF shows the pistol breaking apart after firing a single round. Unlike typical guns that can fire thousands of rounds in their lifespan, today's 3D printed guns can normally last only a few rounds before falling apart. And most can hold only a single bullet or two and need to be manually reloaded. But Wilson and Defense Distributed have since announced plans to release blueprints for several more firearms, including AR-15 and AK-47 style rifles.
The technology is getting better. Like most technologies, it starts out somewhat clunky and expensive, and then it gets better and faster and cheaper. And now we're at the point where there are apparently some very detailed plans for the various parts, not just for those primitive-looking plastic guns that you sometimes see online, but for assault weapons that are very similar to things like AR-15s.
That's Stuart Harris, an expert in constitutional law and a professor at Lincoln Memorial University. Like most critics, he worries that homemade guns can be printed without serial numbers or government registration. And others worry that guns made out of plastic will be inherently undetectable. But while most 3D printed guns are made out of plastic, there's a 1988 law called the Undetectable Firearms Act, which says that if you manufacture a gun in the US, it has to include at least 3.7 ounces of metal in it. And that metal has to show the profile of a gun. The blueprint for the Liberator has enough metal to comply with that law. So how is this legal, and how will it play out in court? Wilson's argument is that he has the First Amendment right to publish the blueprints, that the files are speech and should be protected. And this is where it gets wonky. Back in 2013, when Wilson tried to post the blueprints for the Liberator, the State Department under Obama ordered him to take them down, saying that those digital blueprints count as, quote, technical data. And technical data is regulated under ITAR. So the State Department was essentially saying that Wilson was illegally exporting munitions by posting those blueprints online. But there's not a clear definition of where the line is between technical data and speech.
The same theory the State Department was asserting about the prevention of publication of technical data on the internet, that if that were accepted by the courts, that would mean the State Department would be able to impose a prior restraint on lots of very important reporting.
And so this is where the gun control debate changes from a battle over the Second Amendment to one over the First Amendment.
Ultimately, however, the First Amendment is not an absolute. Nothing in the Constitution or the law is absolute. And so any court, even evaluating this under the very strict scrutiny that content-based regulation gets under the First Amendment, could very well determine that the government has a compelling interest in not having this sort of information generally available, and that prohibiting its transmission is really the only way to prevent it from getting into the hands of people who really should not have it.
When a Seattle judge temporarily blocked Wilson's plans to post the blueprints, lawyers argued that the public would suffer irreparable harm if they were published, even though there were, quote, serious First Amendment issues that would need to be later worked out in court.
In fact, that's the government's argument here, that Mr. Wilson uploads this information and some terrorist is then able to download this information. That is a national security issue, and that's one of the recognized exceptions to the protections of the First Amendment.
So this is where the case is now. There's a follow-up hearing in Seattle on August 10th.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.